Thank you so much, Dr. Ismail Rafai, and thank you, sir. Uh, is my voice clear enough? Great, thank you. Alhamdulillah. Well, this is a workshop. So a workshop is more or less a training session, we all know. But I don't want to sound as though I am teaching you something. No, it's practically impossible. You all are experienced teachers, and as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to designing a test based on CLOs, many of you are far more conversant. So I'm not going to talk about how to design a test. So this is kind of management skills it covers. Truly speaking, what I'm going to do here is kind of share what I do exactly concerning this alignment thing. Right. So this particular workshop is similar to what I did last semester, but it was general. That primarily emphasized stress reduction in the case of writing, course report writing. Yes, I agree. I spoke a bit about alignment, but the coverage was too little. This is specifically about the CLO alignment and how to align the CLOs with the tests and the assessment tools you use. All right. It's worth mentioning that this is a workshop and there's no room for you just to keep on listening to me. You need to get involved as well. So let's move on to the warm-up task here. Well, it's a brainstorming task. I would like you all to read the question carefully and think about the possible potential issues which might be raised concerning the measurements you can see here. So you have 2 minutes to think. When you are ready with your answers, please raise your hand. Thank you so much indeed. All right, thank you so much for your wonderful feedback. So as far as measurement is concerned, one of the conspicuous problem worth mentioning here is the fact that the CLOs, based on the final exam, scored exactly the same, each and every one. Just imagine you have 30 students, and is it logical to believe that all of them are equally good at all the CLOs? I don't think so, right. So apparently the report looks very, very good. It's well prepared, well written, but this is not the right way, I'm sorry to say. All right, I'd like to move on to the next slide. And let's take a look at what we have next. And oh yes, this is my real presentation. I'm going to start my presentation by pointing up why we should design an alignment plan in advance. Next, I'm going to give you some examples of some plans that look really sensible. And I'll then move on to the measurement methods, which I personally believe is the most essential part of this particular workshop. Last of all, conclusion. Let's now move on to the first slide here. This particular slide emphasizes the importance of doing it in advance. So we are still at the beginning. This is week 5. So as coordinators, we need to design it now. And we need to design our tests accordingly, according to the plan I have designed. We should never do it after the final exam. So a common mistake we make as coordinators is usually aligning CLOs with the tests right after the final examination, or you can say, in other words, just before the course report submission. So by doing this, you are simply stressing you out. This leads to a nightmarish experience. This is not a good practice, I'm sorry to say. It's not. Yes, let me look at the message. Yes, exactly. So you're right. Thank you, Dr. Mohsen Raza Khan. Well, yes, we can do that while designing our course plan. That's a very good point. Thank you indeed. Yes. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Here is an example, and what you can see here is the plan I have designed for phonetics. So the one I designed last semester was slightly more complicated. Right, so here you can see 1.1 is aligned with the first quiz, and likewise 1.2 is aligned with midterm 1. Yes, the important thing you should remember, we all should remember, is the fact that the full length exams we give cannot be aligned with a single learning outcome. We have to cover more than 1 or 3, sometimes even 4, depending on the course you are teaching. So you can see here midterm 1 is aligned with 3 different learning outcomes, 1.2, 4, and 5. So to measure 1.2, you cannot depend on the overall marks students achieved in the entire exam. You have to consider the just one part, midterm 1, questions about speech organs. That's what you need to focus on. So based on the marks, you have to measure 1.2. That's the way, task by task. This is very, very important. And likewise, you do the same for 1.4 and 1.5. So if you expect precision for precise measurement, I'm sorry, you have to do that right away. Let's move on. Let me talk about the final examination. The way I measured here, is divided into 3 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and covering different topics. So in the same way, 2.3, 4, and 3 and 5 should be measured separately. Well, I'm going to talk about the survey in detail at the end of the presentation, inshallah. All right. This has been taken from vocabulary 2, level 4. This shows one of the possible ways to align the CLOs with the tests. Here you can see 1.1 aligned with quiz 1. Well, the important thing worth mentioning here is the fact that the coordinator, in this case, must read the CLOs very, very carefully before designing a test. Quiz 1, for example, should test your students' ability to understand definitions and explanations. Well, if you go down a bit, you can see midterm 1, which has 2 parts. Well, I mean, in this case, you need to make sure 1.3 and 4 are measured separately according to the points achieved in part 1 and 2. Well, this is just an example, or a sample, you can say. The coordinator knows a lot better than I do about what to do. Let's move on to the next slide. Well, let me talk a bit about the assignment aligned with 2.4. What does it say? Choose the right words to express their ideas and thoughts in speaking. Well, it's very clear. It is obvious that it's all about speaking using the contextual vocabulary. So what we need to do, what we can possibly do, is design a task based on the lexical approach. So we need to contextualize a list of lexical items and ask them to speak about a topic using those words. That might work. Oh, let's move on. So this is grammar 1. You can do exactly the same here. A grammar exam is a lot more complicated than a vocabulary one. So this is just an example again, and it shows what a coordinator might do. I'm not saying should do. Right. All right, let's move on. Well, it all comes down to how to measure the CLOs. Yes, again, this is something you already know. Once you are done with the test, choose the appropriate calculator. In this case, 5 points. So insert all the figures like you always do and get the statistical data. Make sure you delete the unnecessary figures at the bottom. And after that, you save the file, possibly this way, and keep it until you write the report. So it means you have to do it now. I think most of us are done with the quizzes, at least one quiz. So we can do it now. We can save the file for your record. And when you write the report, you can fill in the report with the data you've got here. Right, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, let's now imagine your quiz has 2.5 points, not exactly 5, but unfortunately you have a calculator for 5 points. So in this case, you need to modify your calculator exactly this way. So first thing you have to do is put your cursor in the percentage box. 100%, you can see. The blue arrow, the first one, shows exactly where to do that. So at the top of the interface, the space bar will display the formula, right? Next to the arrow, number 2, you can type 2.5 there, 2.5 here. You can write. Once you type, and the formula will be modified here in row 2. The formula has been modified in row 2, and to insert the same formula into the rows below, you need to drag down like this. You don't have to worry about the fact that the benchmark column shows false. The reason is that you put 5 in the marks column on the left hand side, you can see. So here in this case, figures you insert must be 2.5 or below 2.5. So once you enter the appropriate figures, that will look okay, like this one. All right. So here's an example of what I have done. What I did last semester. So I inserted the marks out of 2.5 under the in the marks column to get the accurate data. Now it looks okay. Now we can save the file. And I did that this way. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's take a look at what we have there. And this particular slide shows how we measure the CLOs aligned with a full-length exam. In this case, the final one. Well, this one is not accurate in that the CLOs should not score exactly the same. So CLOs are different here. And the one student cannot be equally good at all of them. And if you average them all, so definitely they will be different. The figures will be different, percentage. All right, so this is not the right one. And this looks quite logical, sensible. This looks okay. As you can see here, 2.3 scored 85%, and 2.4 90, and 2.5 65, developing one. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. So last semester, my exam had 3 parts, I mean phonetics. So I measured each CLO based on each part. For example, 2.5 was measured according to part 3 marks, that is transcription. And most of the cases, students are not very good at transcription, right? So I did the same for the rest, for the other CLOs. So, right. What you can do right now is, I didn't do that, the one pointed with the blue arrow, I didn't do that. So to make your job less stressful, to save your time, you can create a table, right? So pointed with the blue arrow. Right, and this will show, this can possibly show the breakdown of the final exam marks, and this will make your task a lot easier. Now choose your calculator. Let's move on to the next slide. So in this case, you need to choose 2 different calculators, 10 points and 20 points, 20 points. All right, so save the file after doing the calculation. So we have 3 files, 3 different files, right, for each, for the parts, for part 1, 2, and 3. Okay then. It all comes down to what we can possibly do about the values. Well, I personally like to conduct a survey. There's definitely no point in believing that this is the best way, that's the best approach. Believe me, I'm not saying that, please. I'm not saying that. Some of you might be interested in a group assignment and so on, but to be honest, I'm not very good at that. So I find personally, I am interested in a straightforward way. I personally find a survey a lot more straightforward and definitely less time consuming. All right, let's see how I did that. This particular slide shows the form I designed last semester. Well, I used this particular form for 3 different courses I taught last semester, and each rubric had Arabic translation, so that students can understand this clearly. All right, so I should thank, I'm grateful to 3 people who helped me with the Arabic translation, Dr. Armel Matwalli, and Dr. Fadil Hassouni, and Dr. Mohammad Adil. So I should thank them. Right, they did a lot. They translated the rubrics into Arabic. So I divided the CLOs into rubrics. For example, 3.1 and 3.2. I split them into 5. And likewise, and I split 3.3 and 3.4 into 10 different rubrics with Arabic translation. That's exactly what I did. So we all learn by trial and error. The calculation we did was fairly complicated last semester, as you will see a little later. Right, so let's move on here. So it was like this, you see. So on the right hand side, you can see the key. It's a kind of, you can say, a Likert scale. And so imagine your student, one of your students has filled in the form this way by checking the always boxes. So he scored 25. And to make it 100, we had to multiply the figure, multiply it by 4. All right. So that was a bit complicated. So let's say another student did this, has done it this way. And he scored 20. Again, we have to multiply it by 4 to make it 80. So he scored 80 out of 100. Again, this is very complicated. So this time I'm thinking of changing the figures here in the scale, in the key. That is 20 instead of 5, 16 instead of 4. I'm multiplying in advance to make it easy for the instructors. So it's more straightforward than before. All you have to do is total them up like this. It's very, very simple indeed. This is my plan this semester. All right. It's a lot simpler than before. Let's say you have 7 students altogether, and according to survey, you see, they scored these figures you can see here, 80, 90, 40, and whatever. And the calculator you have to choose will be the 100 marks calculator, this one, last one. And like you did for the exams, you just need to insert all the points here in the marks column and save the file. Save the file as you can see here. And this particular calculator or the file will show the points. It will show the statistical data for 3.1 and 3.2. All right, so that's what exactly you need to do when it comes to measuring the values. Last of all, I'd like to say the coordinators must formulate an alignment plan at the very beginning of the course, and you can do it now as well. Well, it's possible to do in the course plan, no doubt, but course plan is a big thing, right? You can create a separate form, separate document for the alignment. It looks, it's easier for you to read quickly, and a course plan is a big thing. And design a plan in a sensible way. As you can see in brackets, it's very, very clear to you. I don't want to read this. Share it with the instructors you work with. Design the tests strictly, religiously according to the plan, so that the instructors are not confused right after the final exam. Oh my God, which one is for which? How can I do that? No. So along with all the instructors, we should do the same thing. We have to measure them exactly in the same method. Right, so that's the bottom line, and that's the summary of my talk today. So thank you very much indeed for attending. Does anyone have any questions?